Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, and it was a full weekend down here in South Louisiana. We're talking about it over the next 2 hours. LSU basketball with an absolute thriller up in Norman. I'll give you my reaction to that. I haven't really spent much time on Kellen Moore's introductory press conference that we had last week, so I want to go through a couple of the bites from that in hour number 2 as well. And we got a lot of baseball to talk about as LSU got off to a good start over the weekend against Purdue Fort Wayne. So lock us in for the next couple of hours. We'll start this show the same way we start them all with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
No better time than the first Monday after a baseball weekend to make some massive overreactions, huh? That's generally what the first weekend will provide. Folks feeling like they've got everything figured out with the LSU baseball team. I get it. We've been anticipating the start of this season for a couple of months now. There is unprecedented access and information to the team preseason. I can remember back when I was going to scrimmages in 2011, 12, 13, not a lot of folks there, either from a media perspective or from a fan perspective. It was me and like some scouts were there. Now it's like an event, and everybody's got the information, and everybody has a really good feeling for what they're going to see on the field. And I think LSU showed a lot of that against Purdue Fort Wayne over the weekend. And it was a good weekend for LSU, make no mistake about it. But you really have to temper your takes when you look at a series against a team that is as overmatched as Purdue Fort Wayne was. I mean, their Saturday guy came out there and was throwing the ball 84 miles an hour. Okay. It was a complete mismatch from the first inning to the last inning. And we expected that, and that's what it was. But because of that, trying to extract different numbers here and there is just really difficult to do because it's not apples to apples with what you're going to see once SEC play rolls around. So what I liked to do and what I did when I wrote my stories for post games over the weekend, when I wrote Around the Horn for LouisianaSports.net, and what I'll do here in my recap is I'm not as concerned with a lot of the numbers. I am more interested in the things that don't matter. It doesn't matter who you're playing to produce them. And so it doesn't matter that LSU is playing Purdue Fort Wayne that 10 guys went out there and threw 95 miles an hour. It doesn't matter that you're playing Purdue Fort Wayne when you throw the amount of strikes that LSU threw over the weekend. They walked 2 guys in 27 innings. That plays against Purdue Fort Wayne's Mastodons and Los Angeles' Dodgers. Okay? And that was, to me, unequivocally the most impressive aspect of the entire weekend. It was the velocity that LSU threw from start to finish, and it was the amount of strikes that LSU threw from start to finish. So you look at some individual efforts, and some of this starts to factor into the fact that it's Purdue Fort Wayne, but that's the only thing we have to go on here, so we use what we've got. And I thought that Cade Anderson looked the part in his first Friday afternoon, as it were, role. He was up to 95 miles an hour, and for the first 4 innings, he really held it about 94. And then in the 5th inning, it was ticking down towards 91, 92, and that's to be expected. He'll be able to build up. But the difference maker for Cade Anderson is not the fastball velocity, because he threw hard last year, even though he's up a couple of ticks. It's the slider. And it was sharper than it was last year. It was tighter than it was last year, and he landed it for some big-time strikes as well. That's a progression from freshman year to sophomore year. That's a pitch that he has greatly improved. And he talked about it before the game in his press conference on Thursday. And then he executed it on Friday. I thought he did a very, very good job. 5 innings of shutout baseball, only allowed 4 hits, struck out 8, and only walked 1. Then after Anderson left the game on Friday, Kason Evans took the ball. And this is not shocking to me, but I don't know that a lot of people were paying a lot of attention to Kason Evans. If you go back, I actually did, because I remember I wrote about it in the mailbag that I did back on the snow day. It was January 21st. It snowed, and I had a mailbag for LouisianaSports.net, and somebody asked breakout freshman pitching and hitting. And I put Kason Evans as the freshman pitcher. And you saw why on Friday. 98 miles an hour with the fastball and a good slider. And he didn't even really show the changeup that he's got as well. It was legit stuff. He faced 6 guys. He struck 4 of them out. And again, a lot of that is who you're playing, but the radar gun's not. And the fact that he came out there and looked the way he did, it was noticeable when you went from Anderson to Evans. Just watching in person from the press box, it was noticeable that Evans' velocity ticked up from Anderson's. And Kate Anderson was throwing 95. So really impressive stuff from Kason Evans. And that kind of started a train that went through the late afternoon on Sunday of the 4 freshman pitchers really doing an outstanding job. Evans went out there for 2 innings. They were perfect. He struck out 4. Then Cooper Williams threw the 9th inning on Friday in a blowout. He struck out all 3 guys he faced. On Saturday, you saw Maverick Rizzi in the 9th inning, and yeah, it was 10-1, so maybe some people weren't paying attention, but Rizzi was throwing 97 with sink and a good slider. He pitched an inning, struck out 2, was perfect. And then William Schmidt got the baseball in the 7th inning on Sunday and was outstanding. He threw it over the plate. He threw that good breaking ball for a strike, and his velocity was up to 97 miles an hour. He threw 2 2/3, only allowed 1 hit, wasn't hit that hard, and struck out 4 without a walk. So those 4 guys were just uber impressive on the mound in their collegiate debuts. Then you go to Chase Shores, who I think is obviously important to mention here, coming back from Tommy John surgery, pitching for the first time since March of 2023. And I told you to temper expectations because what we saw in the scrimmages was a guy that was still trying to find some command. The velocity was good. He was throwing a lot of sliders in the fall to try to work on that. I asked Chase after the game on Sunday, like, how much work did you put in on that during your rehab and getting back to where you are? And he said it was a huge point of emphasis. Because if you're going to start, you can't just throw a bunch of fastballs. And really, as a reliever, as a freshman, he threw a lot of fastballs. And he threw some fastballs yesterday, but he threw a lot of sliders, and they were really good. And the fastball velocity was 98 miles an hour to start, up to 99. And that's awesome. And then he's commanding the slider, which is fantastic to see as well. And the velocity did tick down in the 5th, just like Anderson. He was down closer to 93, 94. And that's expected in the chilly February games. But the guys are going to build up and build up. And I thought Shores looked really, really good. 7 strikeouts, no walks, pitched out of a little bit of trouble, and got the punch outs when he needed them. I thought he was awesome. The other starter that we have not mentioned is Anthony Ianson. And Ianson, I don't know if he had his best stuff on Saturday. I've seen his breaking ball a little bit sharper than that. It was kind of loopy. And I think he's going to throw some of those get me over breaking balls, but I think there's a tighter version in there. I loved the split finger that he threw. I thought that looked really good, especially to left-handed hitters. It's got some good sink and run away from lefties. And the fastball was 95. And I was thinking to myself as I was watching the game on Saturday, and Anthony Ianson was throwing 95 miles an hour, sometimes 94, with a breaking ball and a splitter. And I was like, I'm watching him after yesterday having watched Kate Anderson and then really Kason Evans. And Ianson looks like a pitchability dude out there. And he kind of is. But I covered LSU not that long ago, like 14 years ago. And if you threw 95 miles an hour with a breaking ball, like you were the ace of the staff, you were Kevin Gausman, you were Aaron Nola, you were Alex Lang. Like, those are the guys that threw 95. I wrote this at LouisianaSports.net, but I covered the pitchability guys in that era. You'll recognize some of these names. It's Austin Ross, it's Kurt McCune, Cody Glenn, the left-hander, Jared Poche, Eric Walker. Those guys were never overpowering, but they got a lot of outs at LSU by being quote-unquote pitchability guys. And they threw like 86, 87. Some threw a little bit harder than that, but like Cody Glenn threw 86 miles an hour. Kurt McCune threw 88 miles an hour. And now you've got a pitchability guy on the staff who's doing it with pitch into contact. He's got a thing written under his hat that says, let him hit it. And he's throwing 95. Like, that's how much this has changed over the course of really just a decade. The Stars threw 95. Now, they had 10 of them. 10 guys throwing 95. The velocity on this staff is just astounding. And LSU's not unique there. You go to Knoxville, Tennessee, they've got it. You go to Gainesville, Florida, they've got it. A&M's got a few guys that can throw that hard. Certainly Arkansas does as well. Like the SEC, it's fairly commonplace now for college pitchers to throw 95, 97 miles an hour. But it's good to have it. And LSU absolutely does. Ianson was good. I think he can be better than he was. And he's going to pitch to some contact. That worked for him last year. He had a 190 batting average against. He was okay with the way he threw it on Saturday. But, man, you put him next to Anderson and Shores, and it's just like, it's almost like a takedown and stuff. It's crazy that I'm talking in those terms about a guy that throws 95 miles an hour with a splitter and a breaking ball. Connor Binge, to me, is another arm I want to mention. He came into the game on Saturday after Ianson, and he struck out 3 over an inning and 2/3. He was up to 95 miles an hour as well. Binge looks like a guy who's going to fill a role for LSU in the bullpen. I like him as a guy to put out fires. If they're going to say that Connor Ware and Gavin Guidry may be the guys at the back end to close games, get those last outs, you need somebody to come in the 6th when your starter's out of gas and there's a couple guys on base. Binge feels like that guy. He's going to come in, max effort, fastball's firm, high spin rate, good slider. I liked what I saw from Connor Binge, and I know the LSU coaching staff likes what they've seen from him as well. So that was encouraging. And I want to make sure that I got to all the pitchers that I wanted to. Oh, William Schmidt. Got to talk about William Schmidt as well. Jay Johnson talked after the game on Sunday about how he feels like he's been on the wrong side of the draft his entire career, and it was just felt like they were due to get somebody through the draft that maybe people didn't expect him to, and William Schmidt is certainly that guy. And for him to get on the mound in a spot like that on Sunday, low leverage, and let it go was something to watch. He was up to 97 miles an hour. The hammer breaking ball was excellent. He looked composed. He struck out 4 in 2 2/3 innings. That was pretty sizable workload, 32 pitches. It was just efficient, and it looked great. And for Jay Johnson to be able to get all 4 of those freshmen out there in a low leverage spot as a ramp up peel, I think was helpful to them, because he said on Saturday after the postgame, he was like, I mean, next time it's probably not going to be like that. Now, we'll see. LSU's going to win a lot of blowouts in the non-conference, so the next time may be like that. But all those guys got into a low leverage spot and were able to cash in. So I thought that the pitching, the numbers are great. Striking out 45 guys, program record since 1992. That's awesome, but it also has a lot to do with who Purdue Fort Wayne is, and that's a team that's just not ready to go out there and hit this level of stuff. But the walk numbers were sensational. Nobody went out there and had a subpar outing. Not one arm. You had 4 on Sunday, 4 on Saturday, and 4 on Friday. 12 different guys, all of them had good stuff. So that's really exciting, and I think right now you're looking at this team, and the depth of the pitching staff feels like a strength. We don't know who's the front, who's the back. We don't have a proven answer to those things, but they certainly got off to a great start on the weekend, And Jay Johnson was thrilled with the way his guys threw the baseball start to finish from Friday afternoon all the way through Sunday evening. So that's a look at LSU's pitching. That's our Genesis opening drive. When we come back, let's talk some offense, a little bit of defense as well. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Don't just grab the neighborhood handyman to deal with big bathroom renovation projects. How about a master plumber that's licensed, bonded, insured? That's what you're going to get with One Bath and Closets. So if you need to do a full-scale bathroom renovation, you need to upgrade your bathroom, you just got one of those older homes having some issues, leaks, or just rust, and whatever the case may be. If you need to get that done, just go to the pros. One Bath and Closets is where you need to be. David Duvall and his team are happy to start that process with you today. Go to the website, onebathandclosets.com, and set up that free consultation. Just have a conversation with David and his team. That costs you nothing. And he'll tell you what they can do. He'll give you the expectations that they have. And they're going to do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. You can see pictures of their great work on the website. You can get that free consultation. Remember, financing options are available. 0% to 18 months, same as cash if you qualify. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Let's talk some offense. LSU over the weekend scored a lot of runs. Opened up the season on Friday against Purdue Fort Wayne and put up 14. They scored in 7 of their 8 innings in that game. Then they came out on Saturday and scored 2 in the first, and then hung a 3 spot in the 5th, 4 more in the 7th. They scored 10 in that game, and then Sunday finished up the series with 8 runs on 11 hits. So in total, you're talking about 32 runs scored over 3 games, which is good. But look, you're facing terrible pitching. It was just awful pitching by Purdue Fort Wayne. The Sunday guy had a little bit of giddy up on his fastball, but the guy on Saturday was throwing cotton balls up there. It took LSU a couple times through the order to figure it out. Dickinson hit the home run in the first inning, and then he got through some outs. I think he retired 8 in a row at one point. And then you had the back-to-back home runs by Curiel and Jones. But again, I'm not going to take a ton from the offensive statistics this weekend against that type of pitching. It's just not going to do it. I think a lot of folks were impressed with Daniel Dickinson and what he did. He got off to a really good start in the first 2 games, finished the weekend 5 out of 9. I already know that Daniel Dickinson can hit lower level pitching. He did it for 2 years at Utah Valley. That's not news in any way. The question is Danny Dickinson an all-conference level player when SEC time starts, or is he just a star when playing against lesser teams? And that's something we just won't know until April. So I was thrilled that he hit the ball hard. I was thrilled that he doubled off the wall to left field on Friday. I was thrilled he got one up in the jet stream on Saturday. I thought his at-bat in the first inning on Sunday when the bases were loaded and he hit that line shot right at the shortstop was a quality at-bat. And he's a guy that LSU needs to be a really good player if this team's going to reach its potential. But I can't react too much to this weekend because you're talking about a guy who's already proven he can do this at this level. Now, Ashton Larson, it's a little bit of an interesting deal statistically for him to have only started 1 game on the weekend and have 7 runs driven in. Usually, if you only start 1 game, you don't drive in 7 runs. But he drove in 5 with 3 hits on Sunday and had a couple RBIs in the game on Saturday. So I thought that he had a good weekend. He is certainly going to be an option in right field and at DH. You've still got to get Jake Brown opportunities. Josh Pearson's always going to be there as a possibility. They started Ethan Fry against the left-hander on Saturday. But Larson kind of kicked the door in. And we had Ashton Larson in the interview room after the game was over. And I kind of said, what's it like not playing the first 2 days as a starter? And, because you're talking about a kid that last year hit 300 in league play, that went to Cape Cod and was the player of the year for his team. And then he comes back to school. And if you're a freshman who starts and hits 300 and then go to the Cape and rake, like you start on your team. And he comes back, and in the first 2 games of the season, he's not a starter. And he gave a great answer that I have no reason to believe he's blowing smoke. I have every reason to believe that he's being sincere, but I certainly hope that's the case. And he's like, look, when you're not out there, you cheer on your guys. Then when you get your opportunity, you prepare and you go play. And if Jay Johnson can get this group to buy into that, that will be huge, because they have more than 9 good position players and they have more than 6 or 7 good pitchers. So not everybody can start on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Not everybody can be the closer. Not everybody can start in right field. Not everybody can be the DH. You've got to be able to wait your turn in some instances. And Larson did that, and on Sunday he got his opportunity, and he made it work. I thought Curiel had a really strong weekend, had obviously the big home run that got things cooking on Saturday, but he also drove the ball the other way, showed his bat-to-ball skills, which are fantastic. He made a great diving play out in left field on Sunday that I enjoyed. I thought he did a great job. I thought that Jared Jones, even though you look up and go, oh, he's 2 for 7, like who cares? We know what he can do. But he walked 5 times, which I thought was great, and he hit a mistake out of the ballpark, which he's going to have to do. That has to be Jared Jones' identity. Walks, hit a mistake. Walk, hit a mistake. Because they're not going to pitch to him a ton. Like, you look at the lineup cards, and on Friday, you had Josh Pearson behind him. Then on Saturday, you had Daniel Dickinson behind him. And then on Sunday, you had Jake Brown behind him. So you saw Jay Johnson shake that lineup up. But in any event, there's just no one in that lineup today that strikes nearly as much fear into opposition as Jared Jones does. No one's even close. So that's incentive not to pitch to him very much. Now, you can try to stack the deck and you can try to get guys on base in front of him, so you have to pitch to him. You can try to put your best guys right behind him and hope they're productive and they strike a little bit of fear, but nobody's even close to his level when you're talking about a guy who just walks up. 1, he looks like a transformer up there, and 2, he's got the body of work behind him. He hit 27 home runs last year. So he's going to have to be patient and take some walks. And he did that over the weekend for 5, and he also was hit by a pitch. And then he got his mistake on Saturday and drove it out of the ballpark. As far as the rest of the offense goes, I thought Stanfield had a good weekend, hit the ball hard a couple times. I liked the fact that Larson, Dickinson, and Curiel all hit home runs, even the home run that Larson hit into the wind that he pimped it. Let's just be honest. Like, he pimped it, and it barely climbed out. He chuckled about that after the game. But I don't think you've got on this team 2 guys that are going to hit 20 home runs. You don't have, like last year with Texas A&M, they had Jay Slavielette and Braden Montgomery. Those are 20 homer guys. For LSU, you had Cruz and White a couple years ago. For Tennessee, you had Christian Moore and Blake Burke last year. Wyatt Langford and Jack Caglione a couple years ago for Florida. Like, there's not, you don't have the second guy for Jared Jones. But if all these guys, if Dickinson and Curiel and Milam and Brown and Larson, if all those guys can be 9 to 11 home run guys, you've got enough power there. It doesn't manifest itself in those 2 huge presences, but you've got enough to get by, and they hit enough home runs over the weekend. Again, but I feel like I always have to come back to this. Like, we understand that this is bad pitching. And LSU knocked the cover off the ball for 4 weeks last year in the pre-conference, and then went into conference play and couldn't swing the bats well enough at all against really good competition. So everything offensively is with a grain of salt. I know a lot of folks were a little concerned with LSU getting thrown out on the bases a good bit over the weekend. They're going to try to be aggressive. They're trying to take some extra bases. I think Dickinson got a bad jump when he tried to steal. Curiel, just good throw, good catch. Larson got thrown out on cut off and then threw behind him at first base on Sunday. Jay Johnson said in the postgame that's on the first base coach to be a little bit louder in a loud stadium to make sure that Larson, who's being aggressive, understands that ball can be cut and thrown back behind him, keep him closer to the base. However they want to handle that is fine. But I thought that LSU was good offensively. The defense, yes, it was helped by 45 strikeouts. Strike out 45 guys. There's not enough opportunities to make a lot of errors, but LSU's defense was completely clean. The only 2 errors they were charged with were a catcher's interference. I don't really care about that. And then DJ Primo picked up a swinging bunt and threw it away. I don't really care about that. So LSU's main 8 guys on defense did a really good job of making all the routine plays and a couple of difficult ones as well. You saw Derek Carroll make a great catch in the outfield, and also saw Stanfield on a great line drive that he caught coming on. So that was good. So, look, I thought the weekend was a success. We started with the pitching for a reason. I thought that was the story of the weekend, the depth, the velocity, the amount of strikes they threw. I thought on offense they were certainly good enough, created a lot of traffic, left the bases loaded twice on Sunday, but still managed to get those 11 hits and score those 8 runs. So I thought LSU was good over the weekend. It was a quality start to the season against a team that stinks. Like, that's as blunt as I can be about Purdue Fort Wayne. And look, it's not going to get any different next week. Omaha, who's the next team in here for a weekend series, went to Tulane over the weekend and got swept and gave up like 32 runs. So you got another bad baseball team coming in here to play over the weekend. It's just part of it in this time of the calendar. You got to work through the kinks, get a lot of guys some at-bats, get a lot of guys some mountain time, try to figure out kind of who you are and be ready to go once SEC play starts. You get a little bit of a tune-up in Frisco when you go there in a couple of weeks and play a little bit better competition. You're not playing, Texas A&M and Virginia, but you're playing a little bit better competition. We'll see how that goes. But right now, I think LSU's in a good spot, and Jay Johnson kind of reflected that in his press conference yesterday after the game finished up. All right, let's take a timeout. When we come back, let's talk some Saints. Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. They're an independent insurance broker right here in Baton Rouge. Well, what does that mean, independent? It means that they have access to dozens of carriers, dozens of markets. They know where to place your insurance program where it fits best, where the coverages respond the best, and the pricing is the most fair. Insurance is never a super fun conversation. I get it, but it's necessary for most of us. And if you're a business owner and you're not real sure about your current insurance program, or you don't have a great relationship with your broker, he's just the guy who showed up with the cheapest package, maybe take another look at that. Let the Highland Insurance Group audit your policy to make sure that it reads properly. Do you know what kind of exclusions that you've got? Do you know what coverages are? Do you know what your limits are? Never know when that lawsuit's coming. Never know when that car accident's coming. Be proactive in terms of insurance and make sure that you're covered. The Highland Insurance Group will help you do that. See my friend Jonathan Carbo over there, or find him online, HighlandIG.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products. Shout out to our guy, Trey Beal. He's the best. No matter what you do, no matter what vertical market that you are in, the folks at Gulf Coast Office Products have clients in that vertical market, and they understand the needs, whether you're in healthcare, law, education, whether you're in banking, you're like us, media company. Trey Beal handles all of those, and he knows what you need. You may not know what you need, but Trey does. So if you may have the wrong equipment, why not give Trey a call? See if he can get you in the right equipment over there at Gulf Coast Office Products. You can find them online at gcopnet.com, gcopnet.com. That's Gulf Coast Office Products. All right, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints here. Kellen Moore had his introductory press conference last week, and I didn't spend a lot of time on it because we were out at the box and we had talking to Kramer and we're talking to Jamie Tutko and breaking down the lineup that they had just given us. And so I didn't get to a lot of this Kellen Moore sound, and I wanted to do that here as we move forward, because now he's on the job interviewing coordinator candidates and whatnot, and still think that it's very, very relevant. So the first one we'll play here is why he thought he was ready for this opportunity as a head coach. You make a lot of his age. I told you he's not really an outlier. A lot of coaches around the age of 30 are getting this opportunity. And Kellen Moore is closer to 40 than he is 30. So the question is, was he ready for this opportunity?
Yeah, I've gone through this process for a long time. As a player, I always anticipated wanting to be a coach. And so those notes that I took each and every day was, would I do this the same way? Would I do this different? And again, each and every one of those notes built me up to who I am today. Tremendous support, tremendous mentors that have gone through this process. Again, when you go to different places, you get to strengthen yourself. You get to challenge yourself, get yourself out of your comfort zone, play different styles of football. And ultimately, I'm really, really excited to have an opportunity to lead this team, be in front of this entire group, and support these players as they go through these challenges they inevitably will.
So, look, he's been prepping for this his entire life. It's not something he just kind of figured out at the end that he might want to look into this. This is something he's always wanted to do, and he's been preparing that way and has had a great opportunity and has been in NFL organizations now for a long time. So he'll get his shot. The thing that everybody really wanted to know about, though, and you've probably heard this by now, but I've got my thoughts on it, is what the situation becomes with Derek Carr. And before the Saints even hired a head coach, we knew that whoever they hired was going to have to be part of the decision-making on Derek Carr's future with the Saints. And so that conversation started in front of the media with Kellen Moore on Derek Carr.
Derek's a tremendous quarterback in this league. I've had so much respect for him, the journey that he's been on. He's a starter in this league. He's a premier player in this league. He's had a great journey, obviously going from Fresno State to the Raiders and now here. Really excited to team up with him and go through this process. And so just like any player on this roster, I just got here a few days ago, and I'm excited to go through this journey with all of them.
That was a lot of nothing, and that's okay. Y'all know how I feel about press conferences, especially introductory press conferences as a head coach. I just really don't care. Show me the results. Make the right decisions in the aspects of the job that are the most important. I'm not as concerned with what you say in an introductory press conference. But the question was asked, is he a guy that you feel like you're going to move forward with? And he just didn't answer the question. And,
I viewed it.
I mean, yeah, I'm back. That's my bad. I leaned into that next bite that we're going to play here, but that's essentially that was the first part of it, and then he was pressed further like, hey, is he a starter?
I view it as Derek Carr is a tremendous starting quarterback in this league. We're fortunate to have him, and we're excited to go through this process, as we build this roster together. Again, I'm meeting these guys for the first time the last few days. Really excited to meet more of them, and this will be a lot of fun. So
he did not say, yes, Derek Carr is going to be the starter. I mean, you would hear coaches say that all the time. And that's just not the way he answered that question. So it stands to reason that he's given this some consideration and he knows there's a decision to be made. At this point, I think Derek Carr returning to the Saints is at best 50-50 to me. Because I think if it was anywhere close to 80, 90, 100%, Kellen Moore would have hinted at that. And he just simply didn't do it when given the opportunity. So I think that's the best thing for the Saints to move on from Derek Carr. We'll see who gets to call that shot when that time comes. But Kellen Moore certainly was not going to commit to him on the first day on the job. So what about the rest of the roster? Are the Saints close to competing?
That was one of the attractive pieces of this is, I think this is a talented roster. We played here week 3. We took it down to a minute left to finally score a touchdown when I was in Philadelphia. It was a really challenging game. And so throughout this season, you've seen it. Obviously, injuries were a challenge this year, and those things sometimes are challenging, uncontrollable circumstances. And so we recognize there's so much good going on here. We want to embrace the good, don't lose any of the good while building this thing the right way.
That game feels like it was 10 years ago. That was when the Saints were the hottest team in the NFL. They had crushed their first 2 opponents going into the Dome. Electric atmosphere. One of the best organizations in the NFC, who we didn't know was going to go on to win the Super Bowl, coming into your house. And the Saints played the Eagles straight up that day. I still don't think they're that close to competing, though. It was a good answer. I liked it. I liked that he went right to that, because it's hard to put ourselves back in those shoes that we were wearing in September when the Saints were so good to start and they played a really good game against Philly and just came up a little bit short and all the injuries started to happen. But I don't believe it, because I think the Saints have a lot of work to do. Part of the work that Kellen Moore's got to do is putting together a staff. And the question was, all right, do you have some past relationships as far as building your staff?
There's tremendous value for experience when you've worked with someone, just for continuity's sake. But I think the blessing and wonderful thing that you learn is, as you go through this journey, going to Los Angeles, going to Philly, there's a lot of coaches that if I just stuck in Dallas, I would have never met, would have never got to team up with. And so you understand that as you go through this process, you're going to have an opportunity to meet and team up with coaches that maybe you haven't done it with. And they're going to be really special, and they're going to have a huge impact on us.
I'm curious to see just how heavily he leans on guys he has worked with previously. We've seen some interviews that are already starting to come of guys that he has worked with, and how much is he just going to scour the entirety of the NFL for what might be the best guy? I think there's probably a blend that needs to happen as far as that goes. I'm interested how that interview process goes with like Brandon Staley, because obviously Staley would have had to interview Kellen Moore to bring him in as the offensive coordinator, and now just 2 years later, the shoe's on the other foot. So that to me is fascinating, but I don't want him to paint himself in a corner only hiring guys he's worked with, because he hasn't been in the league that long. If you had been in the league for 25 years, you could probably fill out a staff with guys you worked with, because you probably bounced all over the place. Kellen Moore doesn't have that big a network of guys that have directly worked with him. So we'll see how that all shakes out, probably honestly over the course of this week. You got to get ready for the combine, understand what you're looking for, how you want to move forward with roster building. You need to have a staff in place to do that. So I think over the next 5 to 7 days, you should start to see a lot of guys starting to agree to terms with New Orleans. One of the guys that won't be doing that is Sean Payton. But Kellen Moore talked about Sean Payton's offense being an influence on him.
Absolutely, huge impact. Joe Lombardi was our offensive coordinator when I was a player in Detroit. Learned that system, grew in that system. Certainly a lot of that still has a huge impact on what we've done the last couple stops along the way. And so, there's certainly been a huge influence. I think a lot of us throughout this league, tons of respect and appreciation for what Drew and Sean did here. It set a firm foundation, set the pinnacle of what the standard is for this place, and certainly for offensive football throughout this league.
Here's where I am on Kellen Moore right now. He's been the Saints coach for a week. I really think that he is going to do a good job with the Saints offense, assuming they can put a functional quarterback in that system. If you can't, then you have no chance. And it's a hard thing to do. But when I start to rank things in terms of my confidence of Kellen Moore's ability in being the head coach of the Saints, and you start talking about hiring a staff, and you talk about setting a culture, you talk about running practices, and you talk about running training camps, you talk about roster management, then you talk about the offensive play calling and scheme. Like, the offensive play calling and scheme is like at the top of my confidence level. I really think he's going to do a good job of that if you can get just a functional quarterback in there. If you can find a really good one, I think Kellen Moore can be great. And he showed that with Jalen Hurts, and he showed that with Dak Prescott. But that's something I'm really confident he can do. And of course, we know the best run in the history of this franchise came with a guy who had the offense humming. He just happened to find a Hall of Fame quarterback. But look, Sean Payton took Bo Nix to the playoffs this year. So he's just a great coach. And I think I'm not going to put Kellen Moore in Sean Payton's air right now. But I think that they have a similar profile. And that gives me confidence in Kellen Moore's ability to call plays. The rest of it, I have no idea, but we're going to watch. And it starts right now as he starts to put together a staff. I think throughout the course of the next week, we'll start to talk about the guys that they hire, the coordinators that they hire. And I think that'll be really interesting to see how this thing pushes off the dock in the Kellen Moore era. So that's your Saints talk for today. If you're looking for Saints coverage, go to LouisianaSports.net. Ross Jackson is crushing it. Our Saints numbers have been fantastic over the last couple of weeks, and it's been an interesting time to be a Saints fan. So go check that out. Also, You can find our stuff from the Hunt Palmer Show, Hunt on Saints on YouTube, or wherever you find your podcast, you can find our Saints discussion. All right, we'll close out the hour with a little bit of bebopping around the SEC and baseball, including a Paul Maneri soundbite that I think you'll find interesting. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
A lot of SEC teams got off to good starts over the weekend. Texas A&M swept Elon. Tennessee looked good in their 3-game sweep over the weekend. Ole Miss went to Arlington and got a pair of wins. Texas took it to them in the middle game, but they won the outside games. Played a really good game with Arizona to start the season. I thought the Rebels did pretty well as well. Missouri was the only team that had a losing record over the weekend. They shouldn't even be in the league, but they were 1-2 over the weekend. But it was a pretty uneventful SEC weekend as far as baseball goes. Not a lot to chew on, but I did find myself just over the course of trying to bebopping around and looking at the different scores over the weekend and some of the press conferences, and I found myself on Paul Maneri's press conference after South Carolina's season opening win. They played a really tight game with Sacred Heart. It was tied in the 8th inning, and South Carolina was able to nudge themselves ahead, and they won a good 5-3 game on opening day against Sacred Heart. Paul Maneri's first game coaching in 3 years. He had not coached a game, obviously, since LSU lost the Super Regional in Knoxville. And I found one of his comments to be quite humorous. I think you'll agree as well, and we'll play it here in a second. But for reference, South Carolina on Friday started a pitcher by the name of Dylan Eskew, and he threw 5 innings of 1-run baseball. He struck out 9 and didn't walk anybody. It was a really good outing by Dylan Eskew. And this is what Paul Maneri had to say about the key to the game for South Carolina on Friday.
Going forward, but we did enough offensively, to scratch a few runs across. The key to the game, though, for us, I think, was Dylan Cruz pitching out of that jam early in the game, and then Parker Marlott coming in and doing such a tremendous job.
Well, that was close. If you missed that, the key to the game was Dylan Cruz pitching out of that jam. Dylan Eskew is who he was looking for there. I'm sure he would have loved it if Dylan Cruz was on his South Carolina team, but he's not. Ethan Petrie is, and he's good, just not quite as good as Dylan Cruz. I was listening to that on Friday evening at my house, and I just got a good chuckle out of that. A little Freudian slip there from Coach Maneri, who got off to a 3-0 start there with his South Carolina Gamecocks against Sacred Heart. To me, the one team I wanted to look at the most closely was Texas A&M over the weekend. I watched probably more of their games than I should have. Texas A&M and Elon should not be taking up a lot of my time on the weekend, but it's a really intriguing team. It's the team that everybody's got ranked preseason number 1. They've got the star power with Jay Slavielette and Ryan Prager, and they're thought of as the most talented team in college baseball, and a team that a lot of people think will likely contend for a championship. And I just wanted to kind of take a look at them, and they were in some tight games with Elon, and then Elon couldn't quite get over the hump in the late innings, and the talent kind of took over for Texas A&M. Laviolette did hit a homer. Hayden Schott was really good for Texas A&M. And I'm a little bit interested in how Texas A&M pitches behind Ryan Prager. That's going to be their big key. And I thought those guys were just okay over the weekend. Justin Lampkin started one of those games. He was a starter for them a good bit last year, started some games in the College World Series. And I've just never been like uber impressed with him. And against Elon, he threw 4 innings, gave up 6 hits and 3 runs. Now, he struck out 9, but I'm a little iffy on the back end of Texas A&M's pitching. And we'll talk to Joe Healy about it on Thursday when we have him on, and he'll give a more educated opinion than mine is. But I know Prager's good. He's not overpowering, but he's good. Lampkin, I've just always kind of thought was okay, and he was very much just okay over the weekend. So I would feel better about Texas A&M if I thought they really had a 1-2 punch at the top of the rotation. I don't know that they do. So, and they don't have their two best relievers from last year, which is Chris Cortez and Evan Aschenbeck as well. So, again, not going to spend a ton of time on the rest of the Southeastern Conference in February talking baseball, but I know that y'all are interested in baseball. Y'all are excited that baseball's here, and Texas A&M's on LSU's schedule and the preseason number 1 team in the country. So I figured it's not a terrible topic to cover the last 4 minutes of the show on the hour. But I thought A&M was a little bit underwhelming in a couple of aspects of the game, but they did get off and win all 3 games against an Elon program that's been pretty decent for the last couple of years. So that's a look at the Southeastern Conference, specifically the Aggies on opening weekend. If you missed any of the first hour of the show today, you can catch it on demand, 1045ESPN.com's on-demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. Our Genesis opening drive today was about the pitching and how well LSU threw it in terms of balls and strikes over the weekend. I talked about LSU's offense and their defense as well in the second segment of the show. Kellen Moore, press conference sound from late last week, was at 1:30. Again, all that is on demand wherever you find your sound. Hour number 2, LSU basketball got a win on Saturday, and it was in the most dramatic of fashions. We will certainly talk about that. And Shea Dixon from On 3 has got a fantastic report up right now on his site about the future of LSU basketball and Matt McMahon. So I'll comment a little bit on what Shea had to say there in hour number 2 as well. We'll pause for SportsCenter. Come back with us for the second hour. Our Monday shows, as always, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. Every car that is on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. That's as good as you're going to find in the industry. 10 years, 100,000 miles on that warranty. It's just part of being a Genesis driver. Also, not a bad gig, 3 years of complimentary maintenance on your new Genesis. 3 years. That's a long time. My kid's 3. I can tell you it's a long time. Complimentary maintenance on your new Genesis purchase. Plus, it can be valet complimentary maintenance. So they come to you. Got to get that oil change. Somebody like sitting on the service aisle forever waiting to see when they're going to get to your vehicle. It's not going to happen at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They'll take the car to the dealership. They'll get the service done. They'll bring it right back to you. It's a luxury vehicle at a reasonable price. They're on Airline at Piku. Go on by and see them. Visit with their brand ambassadors. Get behind the wheel. But you can always check them out and start your process at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Genesisofbatonrouge.com.